Sober Now, and today's topic is I'm sober, now what? Streaming today on a bunch of different platforms, but one of them is Sober Now's Facebook page. If you haven't been over there yet, I would really appreciate it if you take just a moment, look us up, give that page a like, and you'll get notifications for all of our future live streams and lots of other content that we're creating. Very much welcome your comments, your questions. Always want to make this as interactive as possible. So, again, jump on one of our Facebook streams, type in your questions, comments, what's going on with you today. Whether it's on topic or not, we always want to be a resource to you. So, we'd love to hear what's going on in your life and in your recovery today. All right, let's jump into it. I want to first acknowledge, choosing your path to recovery, getting on it, staying on it, it's one of the most badass things that a human being can do. There is, however, a world of difference between being clean and sober and being in recovery. And one of the biggest pitfalls that people fall into is the expectations they have upon achieving abstinence is the most common way this plays out. And there's this expectation that your life's just going to be all roses now. It's going to be all good because you've made this huge change. And absolutely, you're going to see benefit. Your health's going to improve dramatically. Your life is going to become a lot more manageable. And there's an awful lot of things that won't change because you got clean, like other people, places, and things. There's a lot that is going to become clear, and much of it is not pretty. We start viewing what my friends in 12-step programs refer to as the wreckage of our past, the devastation that active addiction brings into a person's life. And that obviously can be really overwhelming. And when we're overwhelmed, we go back to what's familiar. Sometimes self-destruction or relapse is simply what happens because we feel like this is unbearable. We'd rather numb this pain than feel it. We'd rather hide from these fears than face them. And I totally get that, but I also know that it perpetuates the cycle. And what we're looking to do is build a new life, build something that's far greater, become something that's far greater. So in the simplest terms, nobody does recovery alone. I've known a lot of people that tried. Every single one of them failed. And what I suggest to folks is that, working recovery alone, the best you can hope for is being lonely. What I find for a lot of folks that I've served over these many years is that there's only so far a person can go alone. For a lot of us, that's the kind of pattern of going through steps 1, 2, and 3 and relapsing. A lot of us find that there's just so much that overwhelms us. And when we don't have active support, when we don't have people holding us accountable, it's too easy to regress, to go back to what's familiar. It's overwhelming to face our past, to notice all of the emotions and all of the memories that are surfacing. And so we are people that need people. We need accountability. We need to have people holding us accountable for our goals. Having this scenario where you're relying on yourself or holding yourself accountable is bullshit. It doesn't work. In early recovery, we don't trust ourselves to begin with. There's an awful lot that we're not able to see or not willing to see. And so having somebody in your corner that's checking your blind spots and having a really effective support system is just absolutely vital. Recovery can be defined in a lot of different ways, and just as I honor all pathways, I honor whatever works for a person. My friend Artis, one of the very best addictions counselors I ever worked with, had a definition that I always loved. She would say that recovery is awareness of the attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors that block change. That's really important for us because we're people who fear change and we're uncomfortable with change even when we know it's positive. In the simplest possible terms, we oftentimes feel like we have no idea what we're doing. We feel like frauds, we feel like imposters, And moreover, it feels like we just don't know how to be, much less what to do. So our attitude about change needs to change. Recovery is about transforming your life. It's about creating a life that's so good that you wouldn't want to mess it up by using. So the emphasis that I always place is on the very basics. And the basics are not exciting, they're not sexy, but they're vitally important. And the possibilities that they create when we attend to those very basic things, that's the stuff that we're working towards. That's the stuff that's life-changing. So the basics, as my friends in AA say, don't drink, don't think, go to meetings. And if you can do that, the possibilities expand right off the bat. Making major changes in our lives in the first year of recovery is something that typically we discourage folks from doing. And what that's really about is don't embrace any new distractions, particularly a new relationship. And of course, in recovery, when we talk about relationships, we're really talking about romantic partnerships. So I say to folks, I hope you have tons of new relationships. I hope you have sponsorship and contacts, friends, mentors, counselors, coaches. I hope you reconnect with your family. I hope there's lots of good, sober people in your life, because one of the changes that takes place in early recovery is you realize that a lot of your friends aren't friends. They're people you did drugs with. They're people that are only spiraling downward in their lives and not people that can be safe to be around in the here and now. So if we keep it simple, we're not looking for new romantic partnerships. Finding the perfect love is certainly not going to do a damn thing for your addiction except potentially feed it. And I always encourage folks to think about a few things. Number one, the biggest objection when we say to people, don't start a new relationship in early recovery, is they think that they now have to go a full year without having sex. And that's just not true. You have to be more honest about what it is that you're looking for and what it is that you're ready for. I think if we're honest with ourselves, we could reasonably ask, what the hell do I bring to a potential new partnership in early recovery? Louise Hayes was a self-help guru for a lot of years, and the one thing she said that I really held on to is that we should aspire to being the kind of person that we want to attract. So, if you're 3, 6, 9 months into recovery and you're just starting to rebuild a life, I understand the temptation to get that new partner, to have that person in your life. We all have these emptinesses that we're trying to fill. But realistically, it's just not time for that. Realistically, I often ask people, how many healthy relationships have you had? And the answer that's most common is none. I'll say, okay, so how about if we wait till you're in a place where your life is manageable, your life is healthy, you're making some investments in yourself, and then we'll consider who the next person you're going to date is. And then my other piece of advice is, how about if you don't pick the next one? How about if your higher power picks the next person that you become involved in? There's a recovery expression about having a bad picker. The kind of folks that we gravitate towards are people that are most familiar to us. People who are very much like our family of origin, people who are toxic, not just in terms of people we date, people, co-worker relationships, people that we befriend, people that we just are kind of drawn towards. I often get asked by people in recovery, how do I know if this is a potentially healthy partner? And the advice that I give is, if you meet someone and you immediately feel comfortable, run. That comfort level is a product of familiarity. It's a product of you've known people like this before, you've related to people like this before, and you have a strong sense that you know how to be. If you meet someone and you immediately feel uncomfortable, listen to your intuition, because sometimes that's going to be your gut saying, hey, this isn't a safe person. But more often than not, it's your heart saying, I don't know how to act right now. I'm not sure. I feel uncomfortable. And I think the most important piece to that is, if you meet a good person who's a potential partner, that person simply wants you to be yourself. And in order to be yourself, you have to have a pretty healthy idea of who that is. Jamie, thanks for writing in. Acknowledging that so many of the relationships in your life change when you get sober. That's very true. As soon as we achieve sobriety, oftentimes that makes people in our lives uncomfortable because it forces them to look at themselves. If we acknowledge that we have a problem with drugs or alcohol, then it creates the possibility that maybe they do as well. And so they may not want to spend time with us. They may find it uncomfortable. They may even try to convince us that we're safe or okay to drink now, or it's okay for us to use in moderation, or that somehow we can control it. Thank you, too, for your questions, Jamie, about how comfortable are we talking about. I mean, I say to folks that growth, healing, and really the important lessons we learn don't take place in your comfort zone. So there's different types of discomfort. I think the ones that we are most aware of are what we're experiencing physically. And then there's the discomfort of anxiety, of the awkwardness, and a million things in recovery are terribly awkward. And they have to be, because they're new experiences. There's something that we haven't encountered before, or we haven't encountered them sober. And so everything's going to feel a little bit different. If any of this gets a little overwhelming or confusing, I always say, let's keep it simple. I believe there's 3 ways that we know things: from your head, your heart, and your gut. Your heart is everything that you feel. It's the part of you that just wants, just feels things. And unfortunately, if you're anything like me, sometimes your heart tells you pretty little lies. I have a dear friend in recovery who calls them beautiful lies. What we want to believe, what we want to be true. Listening to your intuition is your gut. And your gut has a sense of what's really going on here, what's the truth of this situation. And it can be hard to trust because your gut is, for most of us, survival skills. Having grown up in the midst of trauma and neglect and abuse, we learned how to read environments, how to read people, and too often we miss the opportunity to use intuition as something that guides us. Instead, what most commonly happens is that your heart hijacks your head and gets you overthinking something that's actually pretty straightforward. I think the most important recovery skill here is to take pause. Don't rush into anything. Don't put pressure on yourself to have to respond right in the moment. You have plenty of time, and putting pressure on yourself is the losing battle for self-control. So go slow. And consider, too, that as you're starting out into recovery, a lot of us fall into this trap about how to choose a higher power and figuring out if there's a God, and all of these things really are not necessary. I say to folks, talk to your higher power. Worst case scenario, you're talking to yourself. Best case scenario, there is something, it's listening, it cares, it'll try to help you. But even if none of that is true, then by talking about what it is that you want, need, and feel, you're going to have more insight into yourself, you're going to have more awareness of what those things are, and you're going to have a greater ability to recognize them when they're placed in your path and to ask for them from good, healthy, supportive people that are in your life. I say your best thinking got you here. I'm fond of that expression. So keeping things very simple and being teachable, being open to new suggestions, new ideas is really vital. I think working a program is vital. And obviously, if you follow my stuff, I am biased in favor of 12-step programs, but there's lots of other programs that are great as well. Smart Recovery is a great program. Celebrate Recovery is a great program. Buddhist recovery programs are awesome. Whatever works for you. I think it's important because working a program brings structure into a life that's been chaotic. It connects you to people who really do have the ability to understand you. When you're talking to what my friends in AA call earthlings, people who have never experienced addiction, maybe it's really hard for them to get you or for you to feel like they get you. When you're connecting to people in a program, you're connecting to people who have very similar experiences, the same disease, and what worked for them. As we connect with people who are maybe a little further along the path than we are, everything becomes more attainable, everything becomes more manageable and more sustainable. Those are not concepts that anybody gets excited about, but they're absolutely vital. We are people who lived at the extremes, and so learning how to live a manageable life, it's actually part of step one that people overlook. Admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. Yes, they had. And for a lot of us, they weren't manageable before we even started using or drinking. And so learning how to have a manageable life, it turns out there's a hell of a lot to that. Recovery, in a very real sense, is a process of growing up. We are typically emotionally immature people coming into recovery. And because we're emotionally immature, we want shortcuts. We have this idea that we need to make up for lost time. And we want to sprint our way from being at rock bottom all the way up to the penthouse. And it just doesn't work. So instead, I hope you have people like me in your life who drive you crazy by saying things like, you know what you should do? You should drink 64 ounces of water a day. You should investigate a salad and some fruit and some vegetables. That's a good idea. You should go to work and you should attend meetings and you should get a sponsor, a recovery coach, a counselor, get all that stuff. Too often people fall into the black and white of, well, should I do this or that? And I usually say, yes, do all of that. Doing those very basic things creates this dynamic. It's an expression that my friends in NA use. Lost dreams awaken and new possibilities arise. So I want you to think about this as building a new foundation for your life. I think it's a cheesy metaphor, but it's just like building a house. If you build a house on a bad foundation, it's going to fall down, right? It's going to fall apart sooner or later. And even if it doesn't, what it takes to hold it together is going to be far too great. Start experiencing the firsts. Get used to waking up without a hangover. That's something to be grateful for. Notice that you get to show up for your kids, for your family, for your friends, for people that matter. Notice that you can progressively start setting some goals professionally, academically, and just accept that all of this is going to be awkward. It has to be. We're in uncharted waters. We're doing something that's brand new to us, and so it's just an inevitability. And as my friends in NA say, all you have to do is get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and a whole lot of possibilities are created. Too often, I think we're hiding our true selves. We're trying to not let it show what it is that we're feeling, what it is that we need. We have this unhealthy pride that keeps us from reaching out, keeps us from asking what we see as foolish questions or asking for help. Building healthy pride is a process by which we're building greater confidence and faith in ourselves. Allowing people to believe in you, allowing them to build you up, even just allowing them to give you a compliment is something that's foreign for a lot of us. It's uncomfortable for a lot of us. Get to know people in long-term recovery. These are people that they're gold. What they can teach you, what they can offer you is incredible. Most of us make the mistake of putting people with long-term recovery on pedestals, and I can tell you, nobody really wants to be put on a pedestal, and the few that do aren't worth knowing anyway. The expression of the only way I can keep it is to give it away is really vital here. I think we look at folks with long-term recovery as people who, oh God, we have a million excuses as to why we shouldn't burden them or bother them or impose on them. We're sure they're very busy people, and they are busy people. In my experience, people that are really worth knowing are usually doing a lot of cool shit. But the tragedy is when we go looking to reinvent the wheel. I cringe every single time I hear somebody in recovery tell me that they're going to figure it out. And I'll say, this is a terrible idea. Figuring it out means you spending a lot of time alone inside your own head, overthinking something that's probably very simple. And I guarantee you, even if it's not simple, somebody else has already found a way to resolve, to achieve, to overcome whatever it is that you're dealing with. So if we gravitate towards people in long-term recovery and we listen to their stories and take them to heart, what we notice is where they were, where they are today, and then we can let them teach us about how they got there. Some of the most accomplished and successful people know. In fact, most of the most successful and accomplished people I know are people in long-term recovery because they have a zest for living. They have a passion. They have a desire to give back to the program, to the community. They have a desire to just continue to build a life that is more and more enriched, because we all know that stagnation and complacency are death for us. We can't stay on those places. Nothing about it is manageable. I'm going to do a quick check of the stream. So again, always enjoy hearing your questions, comments, what's going on with you today, and then we can let them have a desire. Small technical problems. Good morning. Thank you to Larry, Michelle, and others who chimed in with a greeting. I appreciate you. Always a pleasure to be back with you. Let's see if we can touch on just a couple more basic ideas. I very much want to encourage you to get some free resources. So if you go to YouTube and check out our channel, Sober Now, you're going to find over 160 different videos and live streams archived there, completely free, on a lot of different topics of recovery, from substance use disorder, from trauma, from mental illness, and from a lot of different things that people like me go through. I want to encourage you to think about all of these very basic things that are a part of life. Maybe they're things that you take for granted. You've always known how to do them. Very basic things like how to run a household, how to run a budget, how to plan for meals and grocery shopping, learning how to cook. All of those life skills are things that an awful lot of us didn't grow up being shown or having instilled within us. So very basic things that neurotypical people might take for granted are important skills for us to add, and they're part of a manageable life. They're part of greater health. They're part of raising children and having the families that we want to have. Again, these are not exciting undertakings, but what they make possible is greater time management, greater financial management, and the opportunity to lower stress, the opportunity to lower anxiety, and create some basic habits and routines. They're so vital, and what they make possible, again, is absolutely incredible. So if you don't have a schedule book or at least a calendar, get one. Write that shit down. What do you got to do? What are you stressed about forgetting? What are the appointments you have coming up? What do you have that's due for work or for school or whatever it is that you're into? What are the activities your kids have got going on? Make sure you're showing up for all that stuff. If it's not written down, chances are we're not going to hold on to it. So making that investment, none of us, or very few of us I should say, are by nature organized people. So what we're really doing is learning some self-discipline. We're learning that it's a pain in the ass to develop that new habit, but it serves you well to put your car keys in the same place every time you come home. It serves you well to make sure that your cell phone's charged. It serves you well to do an awful lot of things. And as you adopt those habits, what's beautiful is they become things that you don't really have to think about. You just do them automatically. Make some time to read the literature of the different programs. I recommend it to people who have never even experienced addiction. The programs of NA and AA, the programs of Al-Anon and Nar-Anon, CODA, especially adult children of alcoholic literature, something I really recommend as a great guide to gaining some insight into yourself and your family, especially your family of origin, but also the family that you're cultivating today, especially chosen family. Make sure that you're gravitating towards people who have what you want, who have long-term recovery, who have experienced spiritual growth, and who are living their best lives today. one final caveat: catch yourself being bored. I hear this frequently from people in recovery. They're like, okay, I got my sobriety down, I'm working, I'm going to meetings, and I'm bored. And I say, okay, boredom is a failure to make investments in ourselves and in others. If you really, chances are, if you're bored, that's a euphemism. It probably means that you're squirrely, you're antsy, you're not sure what to do with yourself. So when all else fails, go do some service work. Go help somebody that really needs it. It's a guaranteed win. Nobody's ever gone out of their way to help a neighbor or help somebody else in the program and then felt bad about it, right? This is a benefit to all, and it really can be that simple. Okay, wrapping up. Would love to connect with you. Feel free to email me with questions, obstacles that you're running into your recovery. Would love to be a resource to you. Jim@sobernow.com is the easiest way to reach me. Would also love to hear about topics that you'd like to see covered in future talks. I'm here most every Thursday at noon Eastern, and very much welcome connections. Jim LaPierre on Facebook. Feel free to friend or follow me. And look forward to hearing about your successes and your struggles as well. One final note, please check out our site, sobernow.com. We've recently moved to a subscription service, so we're more affordable than we've ever been. Under $15 a month. And what that gets you is access to a 28-day home study program, 2 programs actually. One for people who are working recovery from substance use disorder, and a second program for people like me who are affected others, those of us who have loved ones in active addiction or maybe early recovery, and looking at how it is that we manage our own lives and our families while we're living with the incredible stress and fear of having a loved one in active addiction. So please take excellent care of yourself. Please connect with each other, and I will look forward to seeing you soon.